I was rewatching The Lion King when I spotted something jarring in the gorge scene. The animation reveals Mufasa actually throwing Scar from the cliff, but later blaming the hyenas to maintain his perfect king persona. This discovery led me down a rabbit hole of evidence that completely transformed my understanding of the story. After years of analyzing Disney films, I've never encountered anything as shocking as what's concealed within The Lion King. The truth about Mufasa I've pieced together will forever change how you view this beloved character when you finish watching this video. When we think of The Lion King, we're all programmed to see Mufasa as the righteous ruler and Scar as the jealous brother who couldn't accept his place. But what if that's exactly what Disney wants us to believe? Let's examine the evidence that might turn everything we know about Pride Rock's royal lineage upside down. Disney presents Mufasa as the undisputed king without ever explaining why he deserves the throne over his brother. In real lion societies, leadership follows completely different rules than the monarchy shown in the movie. Natural lion prides select leaders through tests of strength and dominance, like a wild tournament where the strongest male claims leadership by defeating challengers. Lions don't pass crowns from father to son through bloodlines and ceremonies. This means Scar might have had a perfectly legitimate claim to rule according to the natural order that Disney conveniently ignores. The movie strangely avoids explaining how Mufasa originally gained power. Both brothers shared royal blood and lineage, yet somehow Mufasa wears the crown. This suspicious gap in the story might hide uncomfortable truths. Perhaps Mufasa seized control through physical dominance or political maneuvering, creating a sanitized history that portrays him as the rightful king. The transformation of Scar's identity reveals the most compelling evidence of history being rewritten. His birth name was Taka, meaning want or desire in Swahili, a perfectly normal name for a royal lion. This transformation hints at a calculated effort by Mufasa to diminish his brother's standing. By reducing him to a physical mark, Mufasa created a walking symbol of defeat and unworthiness, much like how historical conquerors would rename captured territories to erase their original identities. Throughout the Pride Lands, Scar experiences systematic ostracism despite his royal status. The lionesses avoid him, Zazu openly mocks him, and he lives in the margins of society. This treatment mirrors how dynasties throughout human history have treated deposed rightful heirs, keeping them visible as warnings but stripped of respect and authority. Scar's position makes perfect sense if we consider him as the displaced legitimate ruler rather than a jealous brother. When Scar mutters, "I'm surrounded by idiots," we glimpse the frustration of someone who remembers truth while everyone accepts fabrication, like Winston Smith in Orwell's 1984, questioning the party's altered reality. Scar might be the sole keeper of Pride Rock's authentic succession history, watching helplessly as everyone celebrates the usurper. Mufasa's threatening posture during their confrontation speaks volumes. "Don't turn your back on me, Scar," comes with dominant body language and an intimidating tone that reveals the behavior of someone protecting a questionable claim to power. His entire demeanor communicates "know your place," the classic stance of someone who gained authority through force rather than right. We must remember that the entire narrative unfolds through Simba's perspective, the heir of the supposed usurper. Children naturally view their parents as heroes and their enemies as villains, creating an inherently biased account of the conflict. Like royal chronicles commissioned by kings to justify their reigns, Simba's story naturally portrays his father as righteous. The hyenas' alliance with Scar suggests they might be fellow victims of Mufasa's power grab. Banished to the elephant graveyard, these outcasts represent those who refuse to accept Mufasa's claim, much like displaced supporters of deposed monarchs throughout human history. When all these suspicious elements align, we see the possibility that Scar was the rightful king according to lion tradition, while Mufasa rewrote history through manipulation, force, and strategic alliances to secure his dynasty and transform his brother into history's villain. Rewriting history requires more than just force. It demands complete control over how the story gets told. The image we have of Mufasa as the wise, beloved king seems universal throughout the Pride Lands, but have you noticed that we only ever see him through the eyes of those who directly benefit from his rule? That perfect mane, the regal posture, the commanding voice, it all creates this flawless royal image that nobody in the animal kingdom dares to question. But what if we pull back the curtain on Mufasa's carefully orchestrated public relations campaign? At its core, Mufasa's reign is built on sophisticated image management. From the moment we're introduced to his kingdom, we're shown a meticulously staged ceremony where animals from across the savannah gather to bow before baby Simba. This grand spectacle serves as a powerful visual reminder of who's in charge and which bloodline would continue to rule. Notice how Rafiki, the spiritual leader, publicly anoints Simba in front of everyone. That's no coincidence. By having the kingdom's spiritual authority literally bless his son, Mufasa ensures that challenging Simba's future rule would be seen as going against the natural order itself. Let's talk about Zazu, the seemingly loyal hornbill who delivers the morning report. On the surface, he appears to be a comical sidekick, but look closer at his actual function. Zazu meticulously monitors every corner of the Pride Lands, tracking movements, conversations, and potential threats, much like how modern governments use intelligence agencies. When he reports back to Mufasa, he provides comprehensive surveillance that allows the king to maintain total awareness of his kingdom. This isn't just royal advising, it's an elaborate intelligence system that ensures no challenge to Mufasa's authority can develop without his knowledge. The famous "everything the light touches" scene reveals Mufasa's indoctrination techniques. As he stands majestically with Simba overlooking the kingdom, he's not just bonding with his son, he's shaping his worldview. Notice how when Simba asks about the shadowy place, Mufasa doesn't provide any real explanation. He simply declares it's beyond our borders, and that Simba must never go there. This is pure information control. Instead of explaining the complex political situation with the hyenas or acknowledging their needs and grievances, Mufasa creates a forbidden zone and instills fear. Even more telling is how Mufasa handles direct questions about his rule. When Simba shows curiosity about the elephant graveyard, Mufasa immediately shuts down the conversation rather than using it as a teaching moment. He doesn't explain why the hyenas live there or acknowledge their starvation. That would humanize them. Instead, Mufasa maintains the narrative that the hyenas are simply dangerous outsiders who must be avoided. The way other animals interact with Mufasa reveals another dimension of his image management. We're led to believe their bowing represents genuine adoration, but is it respect or fear disguised as loyalty? When antelope bow to the predator who could eat them, the theatrical nature of these interactions suggests a performance rather than authentic devotion. After all, what choice do the herbivores have? Mufasa's ultimate propaganda achievement was creating a legacy so powerful that it continued to control the narrative even after his death. His ghostly appearance to Simba in the clouds reinforces the official story about Mufasa's righteous rule. The famous "remember who you are" scene doesn't just encourage Simba to return home, it pressures him to maintain the status quo his father established. While Mufasa's propaganda maintained his flawless image, a hungry population suffered just beyond the borders he forbade Simba to cross. But what if the hyenas weren't villains, but victims of a cruel class system designed to keep them permanently disadvantaged? The elephant graveyard was essentially a ghetto of forgotten souls created through deliberate policy, a barren wasteland where outcasts were forced to survive on scraps and memories. Let's look at what's actually happening in those elephant graveyard scenes. The hyenas we meet, Shenzi, Banzai, and Ed, are literally starving. Remember how they get excited about eating a small cub? They're desperate for any source of food while living right next door to the abundant Pride Lands. Their over-the-top reaction to the prospect of eating Simba and Nala reveals something tragic. These are predators reduced to scavenging bones because they've been systematically denied access to hunting grounds. But wait, aren't hyenas just evil scavengers? That's what the movie wants us to believe, but actual hyenas in Africa are sophisticated predators who hunt and kill about 95% of their food. They're not mindless laughing villains. They're highly intelligent animals with complex social structures that are crucial to maintaining ecosystem balance. By demonizing them, Mufasa creates the perfect excuse to banish them from society while appearing righteous in doing so. Did you ever stop and question what happened when Mufasa swooped in to rescue Simba and Nala? He violently attacks the hyenas, pinning them down and roaring in their faces. A display of force from someone who regularly enforces brutal boundaries. Notice how the hyenas instantly recognize Mufasa and cower in terror. That's the reaction of a population that has experienced violent suppression whenever they've tried to cross the border to find food. And what about Mufasa's explanation to Simba about why the hyenas are dangerous? There isn't one. He simply declares them dangerous without ever explaining the history or attempting any kind of diplomatic solution. This absence of explanation is convenient because acknowledging their situation might raise uncomfortable questions about why they're confined to a barren wasteland while Pride Rock flourishes. The true nature of this segregation becomes even clearer when Scar brings a zebra leg to the hyenas. Their reaction is heartbreaking. They're pathetically grateful for scraps. Shenzi, the matriarch, behaves like someone who has been systematically oppressed and is desperate for any ally who might improve their condition. When Scar shows up with food, they see the first lion who's ever acknowledged their suffering. This explains why the "be prepared" scene resonates so powerfully. When the hyenas rally behind Scar, it's because for the first time, someone is offering them inclusion in the circle of life that Mufasa has denied them. Their enthusiastic support for Scar isn't villainy. It's the desperate hope of an underclass that has been told for generations that they don't deserve to eat. The most disturbing part is how Mufasa justifies this segregation through his circle of life philosophy. The phrase sounds beautiful and natural, but it's actually propaganda that masks a system of apartheid. By presenting the hyenas' exclusion as necessary for natural balance, Mufasa can maintain a cruel class system while appearing wise and benevolent. It's the perfect justification. The lions get to keep all the prime hunting territory while condemning another species to poverty, all while claiming it's just the way things are supposed to be. The circle of life was Mufasa's clever disguise for apartheid, but his true character is revealed in his final moments. Have you ever wondered why a lion as physically powerful as Mufasa couldn't pull himself up from a cliff that the weaker Scar was easily standing on? The truth lies in those crucial seconds before the fall, and it changes everything we thought we knew about the most famous death scene in animation history. For decades, we've accepted Disney's version of events, that Scar maliciously murdered his brother, but what hidden clues exist in those fateful moments before Mufasa's deadly plunge? What subtle details did Disney embed in the animation that completely transform our understanding of this iconic scene? When you examine the gorge incident frame by frame, a startling alternative narrative emerges. Look closely at that pivotal moment when Mufasa reaches the ledge after climbing up from the stampede. There's a brief instant where Mufasa makes eye contact with Scar, and his expression reveals determination tinged with rage. His muscles tense. His claws extend further than needed for climbing. His body coils. This wasn't a king seeking help. This was a predator ready to strike. In those split seconds, Mufasa shifts from defensive climbing to offensive preparation. His posture changes. His weight redistributes. Why would a king with nothing to hide make such an aggressive move toward his brother offering help? Unless this was his final chance to silence the one lion who knew his secrets. Then there's Scar's infamous "Long live the king" line. We've always seen it as the beginning of betrayal, but what if it was actually a bitter, sarcastic response to Mufasa's attempted attack? The timing is crucial. The line comes precisely after Mufasa makes his lunge, not before, suggesting reaction rather than initiation. Physiologically, Mufasa's inability to climb makes no sense. As the dominant male lion, portrayed consistently as stronger than Scar, how could he fail to scale a cliff that Scar managed easily? The physical laws of the Pride Lands don't suddenly change for dramatic effect. Something else happened in that gorge. Something the storytellers concealed from our view. The camera pans away at the moment of impact, creating ambiguity about what truly occurred. This classic filmmaking technique maintains plausible deniability when directors want to obscure an event's true nature. After Mufasa's death, only Simba discovers the body, a traumatized cub thoroughly indoctrinated by his father's worldview. No other witnesses verify what happened except Scar himself. Simba's understanding comes entirely from grief and the propaganda absorbed from his father. The hyena's behavior raises more questions. If they were truly evil minions, following orders to kill Simba, why did they merely chase him away rather than finishing the job? This inconsistency makes much more sense if Scar never actually ordered Simba's death, if the hyenas were simply responding to the chaos rather than executing a murderous plan. Years later, when Scar confesses to the Pride, he's surrounded by furious lionesses loyal to Mufasa's memory and legacy. He's backed into a corner with Simba, threatening his life. What choice did he have but give the confession they wanted? It's a forced admission under duress, not truth revealed. The animation holds the evidence, hidden in plain sight for decades, waiting for us to see what really happened when a king fell. While everyone remembers Scar's rule as a disaster that destroyed the Pride Lands, what if this version of history isn't entirely accurate? History is written by the winners, but what if Scar's infamous reign wasn't the ecological disaster we've been led to believe? When the Pride Lands turned brown and barren, everyone blamed the new king, but what lion, no matter how powerful, has ever controlled the weather or prevented a natural drought? Let's look at what was actually revolutionary about Scar's leadership. For the first time in generations, hyenas were permitted to live alongside lions at Pride Rock. This radical social experiment challenged the entire foundation of the Pride Lands social hierarchy, threatening the privileged position that lions had enjoyed for generations. Like a fragile tapestry woven with threads of different colors, Scar's vision for a unified kingdom began unraveling not from its own design flaws, but from the harsh winds of environmental crisis that no ruler could have prevented. The drought that plagued the Pride Lands during Scar's rule became the perfect scapegoat to discredit his leadership. Disney shows us barren landscapes and starving animals, but droughts are completely natural in African savannas. They happen cyclically regardless of who sits on the throne, yet conveniently created the perfect conditions for his opponents to blame him for forces entirely beyond his control. Have you noticed how the lionesses behave during Scar's reign? They're constantly complaining about the lack of food, yet we never see them actually hunting or trying to adapt to the changing conditions. These lionesses, still fiercely loyal to Mufasa's memory and ideology, seem to passively resist Scar's leadership at every turn instead of helping make his integrated society work. They want Scar to fail because his success would validate an alternative to Mufasa's segregated system. Remember when Scar proudly declares, "I'm 10 times the King Mufasa was"? Everyone interprets this as delusional boasting. But what if he's actually referring to his ambitious attempt to create a more inclusive kingdom? While Mufasa maintained strict borders and kept species separate, Scar attempted something truly revolutionary, bringing traditionally marginalized groups into the fold of society. The scene where Scar refuses to leave Pride Rock during the drought is typically portrayed as stubborn denial, but it could just as easily represent fierce determination to see his vision through despite overwhelming natural challenges. Abandoning Pride Rock would mean abandoning the first experiment in lion-hyena integration. His persistence wasn't madness, it was commitment to social change in the face of environmental disaster. What about Scar's supposed laziness as king? When we see him lounging on the throne while problems mount, we're quick to label him as an indolent ruler, but these could actually be moments of deep depression as he watches his attempts at reform being systematically undermined by Mufasa's loyalists, all while battling an unprecedented drought that no leader could have prevented. The most telling evidence comes from how thoroughly Scar's reputation was destroyed after Simba's return. The victorious lions would have every reason to paint Scar's reign as an unmitigated disaster, rather than acknowledging that his most significant failure was attempting progressive reform during an unfortunate natural disaster. By blaming the drought on Scar's leadership, Simba could justify returning to his father's segregated system without addressing its fundamental injustices. History remembers the Lion King as Mufasa the wise and Scar the wicked, but what if we've been manipulated all along? Think about it. Disney showed us events through the eyes of those loyal to Mufasa's legacy, but what happens when we question this narrative? The answer changes everything. Piecing together our evidence reveals Scar might actually be the hero, while Simba's return cemented a false history. This mirrors how real power controls which stories survive and which voices get silenced. The next time you watch The Lion King, see it as propaganda where truth hides beneath beautiful animation. Like peeling layers from a familiar myth, we must ask, whose reality are we accepting? What other stories have we never questioned?